I know that you residents requested this talk on how to give a presentation. I was kind of surprised because I feel like you guys give presentations all the time and you do an amazing job. So, but anyway, I try to, meet whatever your requests are, whatever your needs are, listen to you. So here it is. So, what are some reasons that we give presentations in residency? So, one of them is to fulfill residency requirements, although I really don't know where it comes from. Why do you guys have to present so many times? Like FA conference, orbit conference, grand rounds, everything. Like, nowhere in the ACGME was requirements did I find that you have to present even a single time. But I know that for retina fellowship, we did have to, there was a required number of presentations to give. So maybe I just missed it. It's in there somewhere. Another reason to present is to demonstrate your knowledge and accomplishments, to show off, what all you've done, like, what all you have learned. These are pretty like selfish reasons. And maybe not like the most favorable to your audience. Another reason to give presentations is to transfer information. I have doubts about how effective this is. I know how much I remember from various talks, and it's almost nothing. So I guess, in addition to looking at this selfish perspective, maybe it's also good to look at like why give presentations like for the other people. So, and take a more generous approach. So, we can give presentations to help our audience. What does the audience want though? They probably want to change the way they think or feel about something. I do remember like kind of the impact of presentations if they cause me to like think about something differently. And also the audience frankly wants to be entertained. They're going to be sitting there from like 8 to 4 all day on a Friday. But you know what? You have an easy job. Research is inherently interesting. Like you are doing something new. That's the whole point of research. You are addressing a critical gap. Like there's some way that our patient care is not as good as it could be, and you are, working on, finding new solutions for them. And you're answering unanswered questions. Like there's things that we don't know the answer to, and you are doing it. So there is that inherent, interesting aspect of what you're doing. So how do you change the way the audience thinks or feels? I looked back at some other presentations that were given recently at the Moran, and Dr. Hageman's talk was really good at Translational Research Day. He talked about how AMD could actually be two different diseases that are driven by risk alleles on two different genes, and that is really something that it's not, so much the information I remember, but the concept that, there's a lot of variability within a single disease that we call AMD, but there's explanations behind that variability. And maybe, through investigating that, we can come up with better ways to treat those different categories of AMD. So, what are some things that your audience, at Resident Research Day inherently cares about? Think about the, people in the audience. Mostly they're going to be Moran faculty. Well, one thing that they really care about is skiing with their kids. But, that's probably not that helpful for you to think about because, if you were really being considerate, we would just not hold Resident Research Day and let them take the day off and hang out with their kids instead of having clinic. So, but what else do they care about? What is something that you can relate to while you're presenting your research? So they do care about their patients. They really do. And I think it's always helpful for the clinical audience when you're doing research to tie things back. I don't know if you remember this talk by Sheila Baker, but she was talking about something that was really hard to talk about to clinicians. She was talking about protein biochemistry and like the different mutations and then how that protein interacted with the other protein. But she did at least link it back to like, this is the patient, this is his problem, and this is how like my research could change like his disease course and have him not go blind by the age of 25. So definitely linking things back to patient care and reminding people of that constantly could help them to care more about your research. So how to be entertaining. So really it's about telling a story. So, what's one main thing that's a component of every story? So, I like to think about this movie that I watched recently that at my husband's insistence that I really didn't like. So, The Hateful Eight. So, I really didn't like this movie that much because I felt like there wasn't really a plot, but at least it had a main character, and that was this guy. I forgot his name, but anyway, he was relatable. He was likable. I was kind of rooting for him, throughout the movie. So at least it gave me something to hang on to when everybody kept dying. At least he was still alive. But so you need a main character. You probably know who that actor is. I don't know any movies or actors. I don't watch movies probably for this very reason. But anyway, but you need a main character. And it could be you as a person, it could be your disease, your patient, your gene, your protein, but there needs to be someone for the audience to root for. So I think a good example of this is one of our recent guest speakers, Aaron Lee. And he played his own main character in his talk. And he really kind of made himself like relatable and likable because he talked about, when I first started out, I put together this really amazing data set, but then I didn't really know what to do about it. And then you're like, oh yeah, that could be me too. I have an amazing opportunity, but I don't know what to do next. So what else is like important to a story? Like what are the elements of a plot? What did we learn in elementary school about how to tell a fiction or any story? So there's a kind of different components. So there's the exposition or background. So he was like, okay, this is the background about deep learning. This is the background about how I accessed all this data. And then there's this like kind of conflict or action. Like Aaron Lee is the main character, and he's like, I got really good results when I used this deep learning, but I was scared. I wasn't sure if they're real. I thought I could be making a beginner mistake because it's too good to be true. But then, there's some action. So he takes action to try to resolve this. He's like, I'm gonna feed the black box of deep learning different information and see what it spits out at the other end. And that's kind of like the action. And then the denouement or the resolution, which I apparently never learned how to spell denouement in elementary school. I kept messing it up. But anyway, so then he learned more about how the black box worked, and then he was able to do all this other research in deep learning. Then we feel satisfied that our main character is doing well, he's succeeding. So that was an entertaining research story, although first when you're like, I'm going to have to listen to an hour about artificial intelligence, you might feel a little reluctant, but he really carried us through and that time flew by. So how else to be entertaining? What do you think my main point is here, Abigail, about how to entertain?
I think it's really engaging the audience and getting them invested in your story, whether, like you said, the main character is yourself or someone else. It's that like almost emotional investment in
Yeah.
what you're saying, being very engaging, because like you said, like if you're just presenting a data set, but if you have a story to go with it, people will pay attention.
Yeah, definitely that audience engagement I think is really key. So like one way to engage the audience is through like gamification, like asking them a question and seeing if they can like guess, what the right answer is. Then they're more involved, they're more engaged. So definitely I found this to be really helpful for like also in my examination of pediatric patients. If I just have them like look at something, even if that thing is like a crazy flashing light or whatever, they look there for a couple seconds, but then they're like looking all around. But if I'm like, how many fingers am I holding up? And they're like, one. And I'm like, yes, great job. And then how many fingers am I holding up now? Two. And then they just like keep looking at my hand for like really, really long, because they want that reward, that dopamine hit, that like I'm winning this game, even if the game is really, really dumb, like counting Eileen's fingers. So, but do that with your audience too. Involve them as much as possible. I think you're totally right. Engage them. But we've done all this thinking about how to entertain the audience, how to tell a story, like how to relate it to what they care about. But do think about yourself as well, because you really are in residency for you. And the goal of residency is that you're going to be a good doctor for your future patients. Frankly, the goal is not to be a good researcher, and the goal is not to be a good presenter. Therefore, you need to be efficient. You need to balance all those things in residency and how much they're going to help you be a good doctor in the end, or how they're going to help you, with your goals or your needs. So I would be efficient. I would try to not spend too much time like preparing presentations, because I think it's a potential for it to suck up so much time. On the other hand, like public humiliation is probably not your preferred outcome either. So some amount of preparation and effort is probably, what you want and aligns with your goals. So how to be efficient? I'm really just going to tell you things that I've learned, because I'm probably one of the least efficient humans on this planet. But I had this other graduate student that was in my same lab. Here's our PhD advisor with the white hair, and here's the other graduate student who kind of like was around the same, starting time as me, Shin Yu, and she was really like smart in ways that I will never be, like very practical. And I'm like, I've spent a whole week, preparing this presentation for our, we had some course that we're in as grad students. And then she's like, why are you spending a whole week? That's like such a waste of time. Like, no one's grading you. Like, you're learning a minimal amount. I'm like, yeah, what do I do? So she was like, well, just wait until the last minute. And, that strategy has like really helped me. If I want to avoid spending too much time on something, I just make it physically impossible to by waiting till the last minute, which is against like my normal MO. So, but it does help me to deprioritize things and spend less time on them. So another way that I try to save time that might not work for you is by like planning, by drawing things out. Reconfiguring things on PowerPoint can take so much time. Once you have things on there, you want to rearrange them, you're resizing them, you're copying and pasting. That wastes a lot of time. So anytime I give a presentation, I usually draw it out. I have this system where I like fold a piece of paper into like pieces that are like about the same size as a slide, and then like I draw each slide, because it just takes me a very short amount of time to do that, and then I physically create it on the PowerPoint. So, but that might not work for you. Other things on how to be efficient. So I have a picture of my dad here. He's also a professor, so he has to give lots of talks. But the reason I have a picture of him is because I was hanging out with his grad student the other day, and the grad student told me he prepared this whole presentation for my dad to give, and then he had my dad look over it, and then my dad started like reformatting the text on every single slide while the grad student is like sitting there. He's like changing the size, the bullets, and then he like goes to the next one, changes the size and the bullets. Next one, my dad is a genius. Like, he's come up with some new way to like dope semiconductors with phosphorus using like a microwave oven. But like, frankly, if you find yourself doing something over and over again, use technology instead. So I recommend, be like my dad in other ways, but not like this. So with PowerPoint, use Google how to do what you want to do. So how to make it look good, how to make, yourself look good, so that other people can enjoy your slides. A picture is definitely worth 1,000 words. So I tend to have a lot of pictures and not a lot of words, but all the words need to be at least size 18, or they might not be able to see it. But as far as like cutting down words a lot, I have this phrase here, but I can't think and talk on there, because anything that I want to say, I need to have some reminder of it on the slide. So I can't cut out so many words that I forgot what I wanted to say. So in summary, when you give a presentation, you need to balance your own needs, your own life. I actually, when they asked me, Teresa and Strav like asked me to give this presentation on how to give a presentation, I said no, because I said, like, there's a lot of things that I like really desperately need to do, and giving this presentation is not one of them, and it definitely sucks up a lot of time for me to prepare any presentation. I think this presentation, which is hopefully lasting around 10 minutes, probably took me 5 hours to prepare. And if it's like an hour presentation, it might take me like 50 hours to prepare. So, definitely kind of balance, what you need and what you need to get out of residency, and keep that in mind. although obviously don't listen to me because here I am, I'm giving this presentation that I refuse to give. But anyway, but also balance that with the need of your audience, their need to be entertained, their need to like change the way they think about something conceptually, like, and definitely be considerate because they're listening to you, but you have to find the right balance for yourself. So there's another part of this presentation which I feel really conflicted about including. So I think you're totally welcome to stop listening to me right here and now, because this is like in transferring information, which I think is a really ineffective use of presentations. And it's exactly what I told you not to try to do in a presentation. But there are some things that maybe, who knows, might be useful. So the things that I have found to really save time, I wanted to just share with you. So one is creating a new text box. I used to like drag up to the insert and then text box until I discovered that if you just double click on a blank space, it creates a new text box. Other things that I was wasting time doing for a while, I was like deleting the title and content box of every slide. Because I just like to have free form and put my own stuff on there, but you can actually choose a layout that's blank and create all the slides as blank. There's also, changing the default text box to have whatever formatting you want. And there's also using like themes and the slide master so that you can reformat every single slide. I think that my dad could probably benefit from using the themes and the slide master, because you can change the font in every single slide at the same time. And for all your future presentations, if you just save this theme, like I have an Eileen theme and I just use that because, yeah. And then drawing, there's this new drawing feature. It definitely saves me a lot of time in terms of like, making arrows and circling things. So use that. And then how to make things look snazzy. This is something that I don't care about, but I think other people have asked me about. I think it's like putting lipstick on a pig, but anyway, people want to know about like how to make the background, because you can make a Moran eye center background on all of your slides if you want. So it's under design and format background and just insert a picture. And you can definitely like use templates. They're like these free downloadable online templates that are like really, really beautiful looking, and it's simple. So you could search those and use those to make your presentations look good. And how to make images look better. This is something that I do care about as a retina specialist, is that when I'm in an FA conference and you're like every picture looks like you have Sturge-Weber, like diffuse choroidal hemangioma, like it's very hard for me to tell like what the retinal pathology is. So I have found that PowerPoint, when you copy photos into there, it makes them darker. I don't know why, but bump up the brightness. It's under picture format pane, and you can see this Optos photo in the lower part is a lot better. You can also, if you're really, really particular, instead of screenshotting, you can directly download from Access. You can see that the pinkish hue is improved by directly downloading the image instead of screenshotting it. And then when you blow things up really big, then you can start to tell differences like in the sharpness of the image. But I think that for most functions, like screenshotting is probably the way to go. And then just in case you want to know how to directly download from Access, because you don't know how to do that, you go to Access, you right click, you save image as, you go to this G drive, which has your UID on it, you save it there. And then on your computer, you go to Global Protect VPN, and you connect to server. There's a way to do this on Macs as well as PCs. Okay, so that's it. We made it to the end. Thank you, Abigail, so much for your time. I really appreciate your giving me an audience to talk to.